Hello, good day, future top notchers. How are you? Kumusta ang pagre-review? I hope you are mentally, physically, and emotionally healthy as you prepare for your board exam. So, I am Ma'am Z. So, I'll be discussing part 5 of our general science lecture series. So I hope you stay with me. We have 15 questions to discuss for today. And we will start with a very timely question regarding asteroids. Okay, so number 1, most asteroids are found in between which two planets? No, so asteroids are big rocks that orbits the sun. They are like the planets, they also orbit the sun. And there is this region in space where you can see most of these asteroids. No, in fact, this region is referred to as the asteroid belt. So if we are going to rephrase this question, where can you find the asteroid belt? Is it A, in between Venus and Earth? B, Earth and Mars? C, Mars and Jupiter? Or letter D, Jupiter and Saturn? Okay, answer for number 1, the asteroid belt is in between Mars and Jupiter. So to visualize, so this is a representation of our solar system. So from the sun, we have the innermost planets. The nearest from the sun would be Mercury, and then Venus, and then our planet Earth, and then Mars. And then before you reach the 5th planet, the Jupiter, you see here this white part. This actually represents the asteroids, the big rocks in space orbiting around the sun. So these are the asteroids. So you can see, no, from the figure, there are so many of these asteroids. That's why this region is called the asteroid belt. So again, this region with the most asteroid or the asteroid belt is found in between Mars and Jupiter. So it's in between the 4th and the 5th planet in our solar system. And then if you will be asked, who coined the term asteroid? So trivia, sino ang nag-coin ng term ng asteroid? The answer would be William Herschel. He also discovered the planet Uranus. So that's another fact. I-add natin sa baon natin sa ating board exam. So as I've mentioned, this is very timely because today is September 5, and today it has been reported that an asteroid has reached our Earth's atmosphere at 12:39 a.m. No, sa bandang Cagayan. So we are still waiting for the official update regarding the details of this sighting. We have to wait for the report of the scientific community for their official statement. Okay, but as of now, we know that there has been an asteroid that entered the Earth's atmosphere today, September 5, 2024 in Cagayan, in the Philippines. Okay? So, maghintay lang muna tayo ng official report. Okay, now, i-differentiate natin yung term na asteroid, meteoroid, meteor, and meteorite. Kasi maraming nalilito dito, no? Baka itanong din to sa exam. Now, na-mention natin yung asteroid, they are big boulders of rocks orbiting the space, no? So, yun yung mga from a meter to several meters in diameter. No? Still in space, those are asteroids. Now, when a smaller pieces of rocks break off from the asteroid, but still found in space, those are called meteoroids. Okay, so meteoroids are smaller than the asteroids, but they are still found in space. Now, when this meteoroids enters the Earth's atmosphere and it burns as it enters the Earth's atmosphere, you now term it as meteors. No? Yung ating bulalakaw, comets, di ba? Bulalakaw, tama, bulalakaw, no? Ngayon, kapag sa halos sabay-sabay yung pag-fall or yung pag-enter ng mga meteoroids sa Earth's atmosphere, yun yung tinatawag na natin na meteor shower, di ba? Almost, pag marami kang nakikita and sinasabi nila, kailangan mag-wish tayo pag meron ganun, di ba? So, yun yung nakaugalian natin. And when these meteors hit the ground, no? When the meteors hit the Earth's surface, it is now called meteorite. Okay, meteorite na yung tawag doon. So again, asteroids and meteoroids are still in space, When it enters the Earth's atmosphere and burns up, they are called meteors. And when these meteors hit the ground, hit the Earth's surface, they are termed as meteorites. Okay, I hope we are clear with that one. So we have to discuss also other terms and trivias regarding Earth and space. So we have 8 planets in our solar system, and we have what we call the terrestrial planets. The terrestrial planets are the 4 innermost planets, or the planets nearest the sun. They are Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. So why are they called terrestrial planets? They are called such because they have solid ground. They have compact, solid surfaces. That's why they are called terrestrial planets. On the other hand, we also have the Jovian planets. Jovian planets don't have solid surfaces. They are actually large ball of gases lang. No, large balls of gases lang tong mga planets na to. They don't have solid ground. So what are these planets? Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Okay, so again, terrestrial planets, the 4 innermost, and the Jovian planets, which are composed of gases. You have the Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. So if you are asked naman what's the largest planet, so that would be Jupiter. No? Very easy. And the smallest planet, so what's this? If you have the largest, you have the smallest, and that would be the Mercury. Okay? And how about if you're asked what is the densest planet or the most dense planet? That is our planet Earth. Okay? The least dense. Least dense. So, mamimili na lang kayo doon sa mga Jovian planets kasi yun yung mga composed of gases, di ba? So, alin doon yung may pinaka uh, least yung density? Ang answer doon would be Saturn, okay? And then, the hottest planet is the Venus. So, Venus, even though it is not nearest the sun, it is considered the hottest because of its carbon dioxide composition, okay? Next, the coldest planet naman is Uranus. As I've mentioned, this was discovered by William Herschel. This is not the farthest planet from our solar system. However, because of its gaseous composition, the type of gas na nagko-comprise dun sa planet na yun, and also the planet's orientation, so yun yung nagko-contribute sa kanyang temperature range. So kahit hindi siya yung pinakamalayo sa sun, kahit Neptune ang pinakamalayo, hindi Neptune ang pinakamalamig. No, it is the 7th planet. It is the Uranus. Okay? And then, planet with a great red spot. So ano kaya yung planet na yun? This is actually the planet Jupiter. So this great red spot is actually a storm system that happens in Jupiter. Very conspicuous yan. Pag nakikita yung mga images ng Jupiter is makikita doon yung great red spot. Okay? Kasi napakalaki nitong storm system na to. And then when you are asked, what are the largest moons in Jupiter, or what are the Galilean moons, yung mga pinakamalalaking moons sa Jupiter, they are, and this is in order, okay, so these are Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. So minsan may question na, which among this is not included, is not considered as a Galilean moon? So, ayan na, mag-i-eliminate na lang kayo, no? So tandaan na lang itong 4 na pinakamalalaking moons na makikita natin sa Jupiter. Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. Pag tinanong naman, ano yung mga planet sa, ano yung mga moon sa Mars, those are Phobos and Deimos. So, sa Earth, meron lang tayong isang natural satellite. Yun yung ating isang moon, no? Ang pangalan ng ating moon ay Luna. Okay? And previously, we have 9 planets. However, Pluto was reclassified as dwarf planet. No, it was considered planet for 76 years since its discovery in 1930 by Clyde Tombaugh. However, it did not meet one of the criterion for considering object and space as a planet. Ano yung reason na yon? This actually happened in August 24 of 2006. So, after 76 years, na-reclassify siya as dwarf planet. Ang reason is, it has not cleared its neighboring region of other object. So, hindi daw clear yung orbit ng Pluto. So, in other words, merong ibang mga objects sa space na pwedeng mag-occupy ng orbit ng Pluto. Okay, so this is the main reason why it has been reclassified as a dwarf planet in 2006. On August 24, 2006. Okay, so those are the common trivias or fun facts about Earth and space. So tandaan po natin itong mga ito. Madalas po yan lumalabas, na? All right, we proceed to question number 2. It secretes insulin and glucagon that aids in the regulation of sugar in the body. So, what secretes insulin and glucagon? These are two hormones, no, na kailangan sa regulation ng sugar level sa ating dugo. So, would that be kidney, pancreas, liver, or thyroid? The answer is pancreas. So pancreas, pag meron ding tinatanong dyan, which of the following organs is considered both an endocrine and an exocrine gland? Pancreas pa rin yung sagot doon. So, as I've mentioned, dalawang hormones ang nare-release ng pancreas, no? Insulin and glucagon. Depende sa sugar level sa ating dugo, ang magiging action ng pancreas. Magre-release ba ako ng insulin? Magre-release ba ako ng glucagon? So, depende yan sa sugar level, no? So, this is a simple illustration to explain what happens. No, for example, this part here is the normal level of sugar in our blood. Now, kapag halimbawa, pagkatapos natin kumain, di ba, ang dami nating mga nakain ng mga carbs, yan, ida-digest yan sa ating gastrointestinal tract, and then, masisimplify or mabe-breakdown siya into glucose. Now, glucose will travel into our bloodstream. Then, so suddenly, magkakaroon ng influx ng glucose or tataas yung sugar level natin. Pag nangyayari yun, yung tinatawag natin na hyperglycemia. So this stimulus, yung pagtaas ng sugar sa ating dugo, will cause the pancreas to release insulin, no? So specifically, anong cells ang magre-release ng insulin? Yun yung mga beta cells na makikita sa islets of Langerhans sa pancreas, okay? So they will release insulin. Ano yung trabaho ng insulin? The insulin will help in the uptake of glucose into the cells, kung saan natin kailangan yung mga glucose. So, papasok yan sa ating mga cells. Pag marami pang mga extra glucose sa ating dugo, so iti-trigger ng insulin na ma-store yan sa mga organs ng body such as the liver and the muscle cells. So, yung glucose, convert yan into a polysaccharide, a complex carbohydrate known as glycogen in our liver and in our muscles, no? So, andyan lang siya nakastore hanggang sa kailanganin natin ulit, no? So, again, the storage polysaccharide in liver and in muscles is called glycogen. Okay, so glucose is converted into a complex form called glycogen. So pag nangyari na na-uptake ng cells ang insulin, tapos napunta sa liver and muscle tissues yung sobra na store, so ano mangyayari? So hindi na mataas yung sugar level sa ating blood, so it will go back to its normal level. Okay, so nagkaroon na ng balance, no? This also illustrates homeostasis in our body. Now, on the other hand, pag meron naman tayong another type of stimulus, yung mababa yung sugar level natin. Halimbawa, ang dami nating work, hindi tayo masyadong nakakain, no? Karoon tayo ng hypoglycemia, no? Naging hypoglycemic na tayo. So, anong mangyayari? Still, pancreas ang nag-work dyan. Pero anong hormone naman yung i-release niya? Pag mababa ang sugar level, ang ma-release ay ang glucagon, no? And this time, hindi na beta cells ang magre-release, kundi yung alpha cells ng pancreas. So the alpha cells here will be released by the pancreas and it will signal the liver. Tandaan, di ba yung sabi ko kanina, yung mga sobrang glucose na store sa liver as glycogen. So ito ngayon yung ito-target ng glucagon. So kailangan nating mag-release ng glucose kasi hindi nakakain si teacher, masyadong maraming work. Nahihilo na siya, bumaba na ang kanyang sugar level. So, magte-trigger na ngayon na ma-breakdown naman yung glycogen into its simple form. Babalik yan sa glucose para yung glucose yung mag-travel back sa ating bloodstream. So, pag nangyari yun, ayan, babalik na naman ulit sa normal sugar level yung ating, yung level sa ating dugo. So, balance ulit, di ba? It's another form of homeostasis. So, ganun yung mechanism ng pag-release ng insulin at ng glucagon by the pancreas to regulate the sugar level in our blood para makapag-function tayo normally. Okay? So, sa pancreas, may problema yung mga may diabetes. No? Meron tayong diabetes mellitus 1, meron tayo. Diabetes mellitus type 2 also. Okay. So I hope this is clear. We proceed to question number 3. Which of the following is incorrectly paired? So these are actually base units and the base quantities according to the SI units. So i-recap natin yung mga SI units para ma-answer natin tong question na to. So there are actually 7 base units, no? These are the base quantities with their corresponding base units and the base symbols. So pag length ang pinag-uusapan natin, ang base unit dito is meter. Okay? And then pag time, second. Pag mass, kilogram. Pag temperature, Kelvin. Electric current would be ampere, luminous intensity is candela, and the amount of substance would be mole. So these are their corresponding symbols. So again, length is meter, pero kapag mass, kilogram yung kanyang base. No? So time is second, temperature, Kelvin. So balikan natin yung question natin. So, based from that table, alin yung hindi correctly paired? Yung temperature ba, ang base unit ba niya is Kelvin? Yes, di ba? Yung electric current, Kelvin. So, ang symbol niyan is K. Tama. Yung electric current, ampere. Yes, di ba? Tama din ito. So, we have this one. Ang length, is it kilometer? No, this is actually meter lang. Yung kaya in-emphasize ko kanina, pag length, meter lang yung base unit. No? Kasi yung kilometer, kilo, the prefix kilo here means an exponent of 3. So, mag-move kayo ng 3 places to the right. No? So, a kilometer is equivalent to 1,000 meters. No? A kilometer is equivalent to 1,000 meters kasi yun ay 10 to raise to the third power na. Ang base unit again ng length ay hindi kilometer kung hindi meter. Okay? And yung base unit naman ng mass ay kilogram, which is correct. No? Kasi minsan nalilito dito, bakit yung mass, kilogram, yung kanyang base unit? So dapat yung length is kilometer din. So hindi ganun ha. Ang length ay meter lang ang kanyang base unit. And then ang mass naman, kilogram with the symbol kg. So I hope we are clear with this concept on base units. Okay, let's proceed to question number 4. It is the technique of growing plants using water-based nutrient solution rather than soil. Tissue culture technique, hydroponics, natural farming, or aerial cultivation. So the correct answer is hydroponics. So hydro means water, no? And ponics is from the Greek word to toil or to work on. O kaya, ito yung ipinangalanan dito sa technique na to. Wala nang soil na ginagamit, kung hindi, water-based, tapos nilalagyan na lang nila yun ng nutrient solution para mag-grow yung plant. So bakit na-introduce itong system ng hydroponics? Kasi masyado na daw exploited yung ating mga land resources because of intensive farming. So nagsuggest ang mga scientific community na mag-venture out tayo sa mga ibang ways na makapag-cultivate tayo ng mga halaman. And also, na-promote din ito, especially during the pandemic and kung pag nagpo-promote sila ng urban gardening. Kasi yung hydroponics, hindi naman kailangan malaki yung space, hindi rin kailangan malaki yung capital. No? So, nung nawalan ng work yung mga tao nung pandemic, so maraming nag-try ng hydroponics. And then after din ng pandemic, nung nauso yung mga samgyupsal, di ba? May lettuce, nirarap sa lettuce yung mga meat. So, ayan, marami ang demand. Tumaas ang demand sa lettuce, kaya marami rin ang nag-practice ng hydroponics even in the city. Okay, so that is all about hydroponics. Number 5. What type of nuclear reaction occurs in the sun which generates a tremendous amount of heat energy? Is it A, fission, B, radiation, letter C, convection, or letter D, fusion? Okay, so ano yung kailangan nating emphasize dito, no? Yung nangyayari sa sun, which generates the tremendous amount of energy. So the answer is fusion. Fusion. So anong nangyayari sa fusion? From the term fusion, anong nangyayari pag may fusion? May combination. So Ang nuclear fusion nangyayari sa sun's core, no? Sa core ng sun, napakainit ng temperature. Ang nangyayari dito is nagkakaroon ng reaction yung mga hydrogen isotopes, no? So yung kanilang ano ba yung nandoon sa atom? Inside ng nucleus ng isang atom, meron tayong neutron and protons, right? So yung neutrons and protons magko-combine, magfo-fuse. So magfo-fuse siya into a heavier element, which is the helium. No? Kaya ang most abundant gas, pag tinanong what's the most abundant gas in the sun, that would be hydrogen. No? Kasi yung iba confuse helium yung ina-answer nila. So when hydrogen isotopes combine, they form a heavier element, which is the helium. And in the process of fusion or in the process of combination, habang nangyayari to, ang fusion, nagre-release ngayon ng energy. Tremendous amount of energy yung sun. Kaya nakakapag-radiate ng very high amount of energy yung ating sun because of the process called nuclear fusion. Okay, so nuclear fusion is the combination of two or more atomic nuclei to form one or more different nuclei. Okay, so na-mention ko kanina yung isotopes, hydrogen isotopes, itong deuterium and tritium. Pag review lang, no, pag sinabi nating isotopes, they are atoms with the same number of protons but different number of neutrons. Okay, so kagaya tong deuterium, ilan yung proton niya? Isa, di ba? Yung tritium, meron din siyang isang proton. Pero yung neutron ng deuterium, isa lang. Yung tritium ay dalawa. So, they both have the same number of protons, but they differ in the number of neutrons. That's what makes them as isotopes of hydrogen. Okay, I hope the concept of isotopes is also clear, as well as the concept of nuclear fusion. Okay, let's proceed to question number 6. What is the enzyme secreted by leeches that works to prevent blood clots? Okay, ano yung pinoproduce ng leech para hindi mag-clot yung mga dugo? That is actually hirudin. Yung amylase, like for example, yung ating salivary amylase, it is used to break down starch. Yung ecdysone naman, ito yung sa pag mamolt ng balat ng mga insect. And it also helps in the regulation of the process of metamorphosis. Yung lactase, from the name, it breaks down, it's an enzyme that breaks down the milk sugar or the lactose. Pag naman nagkaroon kayo ng, pag yung question na to is na-rephrase, it is an annelid that secretes protein that prevents blood clotting. So ano naman yung sagot dito? An annelid that secretes proteins or kaya a segmented worm that prevents blood clotting. Ang i-answer nyo naman this time would be leech. Okay? Malinaw ba yan? Ang enzyme na nirelease ng leech para ma-prevent ang blood clotting would be hirudin or hirudin. Okay? Number 7. Sound will travel fastest in which medium will sound travel fastest? Is it in water? Is it in solid, air, or in plastic? Sound will travel fastest in solid. Why? Because it has something to do with the molecular arrangements of solid. As compared to your solid, liquid, and gases, yung solid yung may pinaka-compact ang arrangement, di ba? Molecules are very close to each other. The particles are very close to each other. That's why, mas mabilis yung transfer ng collision. No? Mas mabilis yung collision, mas mabilis yung transfer of sound wave. Okay, so yun yung basically the reason why sound travel fastest in solid, because of its closely arranged particles, which makes a collision much higher rate, yung collision much higher than yung rate ng transfer of sound waves. All right, so let's proceed. Okay, so this is actually to give you the values, no, para makita natin yung difference ng speed of sound sa gases, sa liquids, and sa solid. So you can see here, speed of sound in gas, in helium, 965 meter per second. In water, it's 1,482 meter per second. While in solid steel, you can see it is 5,960. So there is a big difference comparing these three mediums, no? Difference ng speed of sound dito sa tatlong mediums na to. So again, saan pinakamabilis ang speed of sound? It will be in solid surfaces. Okay, solid materials, solid surfaces. Okay, number 8. This organelle provides energy to the cell by breaking down sugar into ATP. So ano kaya yon? Ito yung tinatawag na powerhouse of the cell because it is where the breakdown of energy happens to breakdown of sugar to provide as energy. Ito yung mitochondrion, no? So, what are the other facts to remember about the cell? So, pag sinabi natin control center of the cell, that would be your nucleus. The energy currency of the cell, that is the ATP or the adenosine triphosphate, which are the suicidal bugs of the cell. They are the lysosomes. And which organelle converts light energy to chemical energy during photosynthesis? Therefore, this is an organelle that can be found only in plants, and this is the chloroplast. Okay. Next, number 9. Which of the following describes the total distance traveled by an object in a given unit of time? Total distance over time. So, distance over time. Ano yung quantity na may formula na ganon? Distance over time. Is it speed, velocity, acceleration, or actual distance? It is actually the speed. Speed is equal to distance over time. So, para maalala natin yung formula dito sa relationship ng speed, ng distance, and ng time, ito lang yung kailangan nating i-memorize, yung triangle na to. D and then ST. Okay, D, ST. Okay? So, kanina sabi natin yung speed is equal to distance, tapos sa baba niya is yung time. So, distance divided by time, you'll have your speed. Okay? So, itong triangle lang yung tatandaan nyo. Pag distance naman ang hinahanap, speed multiplied by time. Okay? Madali lang, di ba? So, pag time naman ang hinahanap, distance, dahil nasa baba yung speed, over speed. Okay? So, tingnan natin ulit ha. So, ang speed again, pag hinahanap natin yung speed, dahil may triangle tayo na DST, pag hinahanap natin yung speed, it is distance over time. Pag distance naman ang hinahanap, since magkatabi yung S and T, i-multiply nyo yan instead of dividing. And then again, if you are looking for the time, so you have D sa taas, tapos yung S, may over S siya. So, D divided by S. Distance divided by the speed, and you will obtain time. Okay? Let's try it. Using this triangle. So what is the speed of the car that travels 120 kilometers in 2 hours? So what are we looking for? The speed. Oh, ano yun? Pag itahanap natin yung speed, therefore ang formula natin would be distance over time. So ayan, distance over time. So 120 kilometers over 2 hours. So 120 divided by 2 is 60, right? So wala tayong ika-cancel na unit. Kaya ilalagay lang natin is kilometer per hour. All right? Next problem. Let's try this one. How much time does it take for a cyclist to travel a distance of 45 miles at a speed of 15 miles per hour? So what are we looking for in this problem? Time. Okay? So time. So ito yon sa time. Okay. So ano yung formula kung hinahanap natin itong time? Distance over speed. Hold on for a moment. Faye. Faye, come here. Come to Tata. Oh, Faye. Don't cry. I'm sorry for that. Okay. Nagising ang aking pamangkin. Naghanap ng dede. Okay. Again. Sorry. Time, no? So we have distance over speed. So ilan daw yung distance na na-travel? It's 45 miles. 45 miles, so divided by 15 miles per hour. So ayan, distance over speed. 45 miles divided by 15 miles per hour. Okay, so 45 divided by 15 would be 3. And then, ika-cancel natin yung miles, no? Kasi pareho meron siyang miles sa numerator, may miles sa denominator. So, we'll have to cross it out. And so, we are left with hours. So, ang time needed for a cyclist to travel a distance of 45 miles in 15 miles per hour speed would be 3 hours. Okay. So, I hope this is clear. Yun lang ang tatandaan, no? Kahit hindi nyo i-master yung formula, i-picture nyo lang distance is DST. So, help yourself, no? Sa dami na ng kailangan nating pag-aralan para sa board exam, makakatulong yung mga mnemonics at yung mga ganitong paraan. Okay, so we proceed to question number 10. What is the point in the Earth's orbit nearest to the sun called? Okay, so para ma-answer natin ito, pag-aralan natin yung etymology of the word, no? Yung mga prefixes and yung mga root words na ginamit dito, ano yung mga ibig sabihin yan? So when you say peri, it means near. And then apo, it means far or away. No? And then helion refers to the sun. So sa question natin, nearest, sabi niya, nearest. So ano na yon? Though it refers to the peri part of the word, no? And then nearest to the sun. So ano yung may meaning ng sun? That would be helion. So that is already your answer, perihelion. This is the position of the earth when it is nearest the sun. So if you check the diagram of the perihelion and aphelion, ganito yung nangyayari, no? So this is peri, this is nearer, di ba? This is the nearest orbit, the nearest point where the earth is nearest the sun. So this is perihelion. On the other hand, the point when the earth is farthest from the sun. Ano nga ulit yung prefix pag far up? Pag sunhelion. So, aphelion naman yung tawag sa positioning na yon. Okay? Yung perihelion nangyayari tuwing January and yung aphelion ay nangyayari tuwing July. Okay? So, i-review lang natin again. Pag ang position ng Earth pinakamalapit sa Sun, ang tawag doon ay perihelion. Pag ang position ng Earth ay pinakamalayo sa Sun, ang tawag doon ay aphelion. Okay? So, I hope that concept is clear. Okay, so the answer for number 10 is perihelion. Okay. Now, meron din kanina doon, di ba? Sa options apogee and perigee. So, nagdagdag ako ng isa dito. Yung G refers to Earth. Same pa rin, yung peri means near, yung up means far. But this time it's G. No? Pag ang tanong naman, the position of the moon nearest to the Earth. No? Position of the moon nearest to the Earth. So, ano ulit yung near? Peri. And then, G refers to the Earth. No? So, that is what you call the perigee. Okay, perigee naman yon. Kapag naman ang tanong, yung position of the moon that is farthest to the Earth. Farthest. Far means up. Moon with reference to Earth. So, up or apogee. So, ito naman yung answer doon. Okay? So, again, position of the moon when it is nearest the Earth, it is perigee. And the position of the moon when it is farthest the Earth, that is called apogee. So, malinaw? Ulitin ko ha. When the position of the moon is farthest from the Earth, that is apogee. When the position of the Earth is farthest from the sun, that is aphelion. Okay? When the position of the Earth is nearest the sun, that would be perihelion. When the position of the moon is nearest the Earth, that is perigee. Okay? Perigee. Okay. So, wag kakalimutan. No, isipin nyo lang yung mga prefixes. Tapos, yung reference ng tanong. Kung sun ang reference, helion. Kung Earth ang reference, that would be G. Okay? So, that's it for question number 10. Number 11, the major components of the Earth's core are, so anong element yung matatagpuan sa innermost layer ng ating planeta? Is it A, silicon and oxygen, B, iron and nickel, C, uranium and lead, or D, hydrogen and helium? Okay, so the answer is actually letter B, iron and nickel. So ito yung ating structure ng Earth. So from the innermost, you have the inner core. This is believed to be solid and this is composed of iron and nickel. And you have a much fluid outer core, but is still composed of iron and nickel. And then you have the mantle. So ito yung mantle dito nangyayari yung mga convection currents. Kaya dahil sa convection currents, nagkakaroon yung movement ng mga plate tectonics, no? It's because of the current that happens in the mantle. So nagkakaroon din ng earthquake, nagkakaroon ng volcanic eruptions. Dahil ito sa convection currents na nangyayari sa mantle. And after the mantle, you have the outermost layer of the earth that would be the crust. So meron tayong continental crust and meron din tayong oceanic crust. Okay? So again, mula sa loob, you have the inner core, outer core, mantle, and crust. Minsan din kasi tinatanong yung pagkasunod-sunod ng mga layers sa Earth, no? Kung pabaliktad naman yung tanong from the outermost to the innermost. So you will start with the crust, the mantle, the outer core, and the inner core. Isa pa, kung halimbawa naman ang tinanong, ano yung pinaka-abundant element sa crust, ang sagot niyo naman doon ay silicon and oxygen. Kanina kasi ang tanong natin is sa core, no? Sa core, it's iron and nickel. Sa crust naman, silicon and oxygen. Okay? We proceed to question number 12, pero walang animation ang answer. Ozone layer is in which part of the atmosphere? So, this is the stratosphere. Ayan. So ito yung ating layers of the atmosphere. So we have troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, and exosphere. You can actually use the mnemonics and troops of silly monkeys twirled endlessly. Yung iba kasi ang ginagamit dito is the silly monkeys twirled endlessly. Since meron kasi tayong dalawang T dito, no? Dalawang layer ng T, baka malito kayo. So pinalitan ko na lang, ginawa ko na lang troops to refer to troposphere. Okay, so troposphere. So, troposphere, and then stratosphere, and then mesosphere, thermosphere, exosphere. So, troops of silly monkeys twirled endlessly. So, yan lang yung tatandaan natin para hindi natin makalimutan yung pagkasunod-sunod ng layers of atmosphere. Again, kasi tinatanong din minsan yung sequence yan, okay? So, i-discuss natin briefly kung ano yung mga prominent features or yung mga prominent occurrences sa bawat layers, no? Yung troposphere, this is the one nearest the Earth's surface, no? So, ang nangyayari dito is most of the weather occurrences happens in the troposphere. Okay? So, ayan yung kanyang distance, no? 0 to 10 miles yung kanyang um, nag-extend siya from 0 to 10 miles. Okay? And then after troposphere, you have the stable layer, which is the stratosphere. Stratosphere, ito na yung sagot sa ating tanong. Ang prominent feature nito is the presence of ozone layer, which filters the very harmful UV radiation, no? So, very helpful yung ozone layer na yan. Kaya, meron tayong mga campaigns para ma-reduce yung mga paggamit ng mga greenhouse gases kasi nakaka-apekto din ito sa ating mga ozone layer. Okay, and then after that, after the stratosphere, you have the mesosphere. So, mesosphere, dito na nagkakaroon pag pumasok ang meteoroid sa ating atmosphere. Anong tawag doon? They're already called meteors, right? So, dito na sila nagbo-burn sa ating mesosphere. The mesosphere is also referred to as the coldest layer of the atmosphere. And yung thermosphere naman, so it will be after the mesosphere. This is the hottest among the layers of the atmosphere. And ano yung makikita dito? Yung aurora borealis in the north and aurora australis in the south. So, ayan. Yun yung prominent feature ng ating thermosphere. So, in between, dito sa region na to, thermosphere and exosphere, meron pa tayong tinatawag na ionosphere. Okay, doon naman yung mga radio signals. And then, last, the outermost layer would be the exosphere. Okay, meron din tayong tinatawag dyan na Kármán line which signals the start of the outer space. This is in between the mesosphere and the thermosphere. Okay, again, troops of silly monkeys twirled endlessly. Troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, and exosphere. Saan nangyayari ang weather occurrences? Troposphere. Ano ang merong ozone layer? Stratosphere. Saan nagbo-burn ang mga meteors? Mesosphere. Ang hottest layer would be the thermosphere, and the outermost layer of the atmosphere would be the exosphere. Okay? That's it for question number 12. Question number 13. On eclipses, it is the type of eclipse that happens when the Earth is directly between the Sun and the Moon. Earth is in between Sun and Moon. So, ang ipicture out niyo dyan is Sun, Earth, and Moon. SEM, yung acronym na gagamitin niyo, no? Sun, Earth, and Moon. Kasi sa question natin, the Earth is between the Sun and the Moon. So, SEM. Pag meron kayong ganitong arrangement, lunar eclipse agad yun, no? So, para ma-picture out natin ito. Ito yon, yung question natin ito sa second part. Ito yan, no? So, the Earth, sabi niya, is directly between the Sun and Moon. Kaya meron tayong SEM. So, SEM, lunar eclipse kaagad yun, no? Kapag solar eclipse naman, SME. The moon is in between the sun and the earth. Or ang question, anong type ng eclipse yung nagkakas ng shadow ang moon sa earth? So, moon sa Earth, so isipin nyo yung moon, yung nasa gitna ng arrangement natin. So, SME, that would be solar eclipse. Kung ang question naman is ang Earth ang nagkakas ng shadow sa moon, so that would be SEM, SEM. So, that would be lunar eclipse. So, again, another mnemonic for the day. It's SME for solar eclipse and SEM for lunar eclipse. Huwag yan kakalimutan, okay? Number 5, in the ABO blood group, what is considered to be the universal donor? Ano kaya dito yung blood type na sinasabing universal donor? Kasi in most cases, hindi ito nare-reject kapag nagkaroon ng blood transfusion, no? Kaya siya tinatawag na universal donor. It is actually type O. Ibig sabihin, pag ikaw ay type O, pwede kang mag-donate ng dugo sa kahit na sino. Okay? So, it's actually type O negative. So, bakit kaya ganun? Bakit kaya siya nakakapag-donate? Kasi yung red blood cells ng type O, wala silang antigen A or B. Wala. So, pag sabi natin antigen, yung any foreign body that will cause the immune system to respond, no? Para ma-activate yung immune system pag halimbawa, allergic ka sa pollen, no? Pag na-recognize na yung antigen na yun, ay, magre-react yung system niya na hindi ko yan gusto. Antigen yan, no? So magre-react yung ating immune system dahil nagkaroon tayo ng antigen sa ating katawan. So ganun din dito, no? So, ito yung sinasabi ko kanina, yung red blood cell ng type O, wala siyang antigen. Wala siyang antigen. So, pwede siyang ma-receive ng kahit sino, kahit ano yung blood type niya. Okay, so speaking of blood type, halimbawa ikaw ay blood type A. Ano yung pwedeng dugo lang na ma-transfer sa'yo? Pag nagkaroon ng blood transfusion, ang pwede mo lang i-receive ay A at O. Di ba? Sabi natin kanina, O kahit na sino pwede niya bigyan. Ikaw A ka lang. Bakit? Kasi yung body mo nagpo-produce siya ng antibodies for antigen B. So kung ang B isinalin sa'yo, hindi pwede. Kasi marirecognize yan ng system mo, ay meron siyang antigen B. Ayoko yung antigen B na yan. So hindi niya yan tatanggapin. Okay? Hindi niya yan tatanggapin. Okay? Kaya ang pwede lang sa kanya ay A at ang O. Ang B naman, pag B ka, ang pwede mo lang i-receive ay B din at saka yung universal type na O. No? Kasi sa dugo mo naman, meron kang antibody na magpa-fight off sa antigen A. So, sabi natin kanina, ang blood type A, meron siyang antigen A. So, hindi siya pwedeng ma-receive ng B. Okay? So again, ang marireceive lang ng B ay B at O din, no? Pag AB naman, meron siyang antigen A and B. Wala siyang pinoproduce na antibody. Walang kukontra kahit anong dumating na dugo sa kanya. No? Wala siyang antibody na pinoproduce. So, ang mangyayari is, kaya ba niyang i-accept kahit anong klase ng dugo? Yes, kasi wala siyang antibody na magfa-fight off sa antigen A or sa antigen B. Kaya kaya niyang i-accept. Kaya ang tawag sa blood type AB is the universal recipient. It can receive from A, from B, from AB, and from O because wala siyang antibodies. Alright? Yung O naman, kahit siya yung universal donor, pwede siyang magbigay sa kahit na sino. Unfortunately, pag type O ka, type O lang din yung pwede mong i-receive. Okay? So kahit gaano ka mapagbigay, ikaw naman ang pag magre-receive ka naman sa type O lang. Kasi meron kang antibody for both A and B. So, pag magbigay sa'yo yung type A, meron siyang antigen A. Ay, may kontra yan. May antibody A yan, di ba? Tapos, pag B naman, may kontra din na na-produce yung O, antibody B. O, para sa antigen B. Kaya, hindi niya rin tatanggapin. Kaya, ang safe lang would be type O also for type O people. Okay? So, tandaan natin, i-recap natin. Pag ikaw ay type A, ang pwede mo lang ma-receive, A and O. Pag ikaw ay type B, ang pwede mo lang ma-receive, type B and O. Pag ikaw ay AB, dahil ikaw ay universal recipient, pwede kang makareceive ng kahit ano. A, B, AB, and O. Pero pag ikaw ay O, na universal donor, ang pwede mo lang ma-receive ay type O lamang. Okay? Tandaan yan. And the last question for today, this is about the Archaeans, okay? It is an extremophile that thrives in extremely salty environment. So, extremophile, from the term extremophile, they live or they survive in extreme conditions, no? So, malayo sa normal range ng temperature, ng acidity, humidity, mga ganyan, no? So, ano yung tawag sa mga organisms na nakakasurvive sa sobrang alat na environment? Is it A, thermophile, B, psychrophile, C, halophiles, or D, acidophiles? Okay? Ang sagot is halophiles. They are the ones that can survive very salty environment. Pag thermophile naman ng isang organism or ang isang archaeobacteria, yun naman yung nakakasurvive sa very high temperature, kahit sobrang init. So kahit nasa thermal vents, kahit sa mga fumaroles, kahit sa mga volcanic vents, no? So, doon sila, kahit sa mga hot spring, nakakasurvive sila kasi they are thermophiles. Yung psychrophiles naman, or they are sometimes called cryophiles, cryogenic, di ba? Pag may mga ganun tayong prefix, ang iisipin natin is yung mga sobrang low naman na temperature yun, no? Yung that they live in extremely low temperature. So mga sa Arctic, ganyan, no? Frozen na yung ground, kaya pa rin nilang mag-survive. And acidophiles, they live in a very low pH environment. Kahit very acidic, pwede silang mag-survive. So yung mga archaeobacteria or yung mga extremophiles na yan, meron silang mga structural and physiological adaptations na kaya nagiging dahilan ng kanilang survival sa ganitong mga extreme conditions. So tayo, wala tayong mga ganyan, no? So meron lang tayong mga temperature ranges na pwede tayong maka-survive, no? Ma ah, hindi rin tayo pwede sa mga sobrang magkakaroon na tayo ng hypothermia pag sa sobrang namang malamig, expose tayo ng matagal. So, hindi tayo pwede dyan. Ang pwede lang dyan ay yung mga extremophiles or yung mga Archaeobacteria kasi they are especially adapted for those kinds of environment. So, very broad din yung na-discuss natin dito, no? Meron tayong earth and space, meron tayong biology, meron tayong a little of chemistry, no? Mga physical sciences. So, ayan. Dito nagtatapos yung ating fifth part ng ating lecture series. Okay. So medyo marami na tayo na-discuss sa General Education Science. So hopefully, sa next lecture ko naman would be about the other general education subjects. So ito ha, tandaan nyo, yung mga questions na binibigay ko dito, mga self-made questions ito, no? So ang pino-point out ko dito is hindi ko binibigay yung exact na lalabas sa exam. Kasi yung iba, pag naghahanap sila ng review center or ng review materials, gusto nila yung eksaktong tanong. Which is impossible naman kasi wala naman akong access din doon sa database ng PRC. Magre-review kayo, halimbawa may question, pag-aralan yung concept behind that question. Doon nyo lang maiintindihan masyado kung ano yung tanong at kung ano yung sagot sa tanong. So kahit anong rephrase doon sa question, since nalaman nyo ito, ganito yung concept na yan eh. Oh, na-discuss sa gantong review center ito, na-discuss sa gantong review center to. So nadagdagan yung inyong information. Pero huwag kayong masyadong mag-expect na ito yung actual questions na ibibigay ng board. Swerte kung talagang halos, di ba? Halos verbatim na mape-present sa inyo. Pero kung hindi, since nag-aral kayo ng concept, madali nyo pa rin ma-answer yung exam. Okay? So, a little ano lang, word of advice na ganun kayo dapat mag-aral, no? Huwag kayong aasa na. Kasi parang ngayon, ang daming nag claim na nagbebenta sila ng mga actual let exam questions. Ganun, no? So, tapos yung iba doon na lang magre-rely kasi ito pala yung actual, ito na lang yung aaralin ko. Which is very limited na lang yung baon nyo sa exam pag ganun lang yung mindset ninyo, no? Mahaba pa ang time, March 2025 pa. Kaya mag-aral kayo mabuti. Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much for staying with me. This is Ma'am Seth. And thank you for watching. Bye. See you next session.